LTAP students, adults, and elderly citizens. Sometimes they're not the luckiest people in the world, especially when they face transportation barriers, which restrict or prevent their freedom of mobility. Fortunately, most of these citizens do not have that problem. They have drivers, like yourself, who are competent behind the wheel. But driving competency is not enough. A driver must also be aware of the needs of the passengers being transported. During this program, we will take a close look at two areas of major concern to drivers and their aides. You may already be familiar with some techniques we will discuss. In fact, they may be part of your personal driving program. But we must always remember that thoughtfulness and sensitivity training do work together. The foundation of sensitivity training lies in one simple statement: passengers are people first, handicapped and elderly second. If you remember that statement, you will become a more sensitive driver, and your passengers will have more confidence in you. Let's begin with some invisible barriers that are very real to people and arise from a fear or a lack of knowledge about disabilities. Society's lack of understanding prevents disabled citizens from having an independent and dignified lifestyle. About 25 million Americans have mobility problems. Of these, around 1/2 million are wheelchair users. Wrong. This is one of the many myths that are not factual. Wheelchair use does not automatically imply illness. An accidental injury or birth defect may require temporary or permanent use of a wheelchair. A disability is not contagious. You don't catch it. It is, however, an inconvenience. They are not the same. Developmental disability is a disability attributable to mental retardation, cerebral palsy, epilepsy, autism, or other neurological conditions. Mental illness means mental disease to such extent that a person so afflicted requires care and treatment for his or her own welfare. Mental illness can be temporary or permanent. Individuals who are mentally retarded or disabled can be both trained and educated. Similar negative myths exist regarding those persons who have visual and/or hearing impairments. Most hearing impaired persons do have the ability to speak. Because they can't hear their own voices, they may speak with a different tone and volume than you are used to hearing. Hearing aids do not totally correct hearing impairment. They are assistive devices which can improve hearing in some people. As long as we're discussing impairments, let's clear up some myths about the blind. All blind people are not alike. They enter into as many varied professions, leisure activities, and lifestyles as do sighted people. Blind people rely strongly on the basic senses of touching, smelling, and hearing in their daily lives. This added sensitivity is not present at birth. It is developed through daily use. New drivers may experience discomfort or anxiety at their first experience with disabled persons. This is not uncommon, primarily because you're not sure of how you should respond in certain situations. If this happens, discuss these feelings with your supervisor. Other drivers may have experienced the same feelings, and learning how they coped may help you. If you understand the reasons for your discomfort, you will become a more aware and sensitive driver. There are 3 basic categories of persons of all ages that you may have as passengers. The challenge lies in your ability to recognize and cope with the special needs of these passengers. Elderly persons, for example, often have a decrease in their ability to use their senses to their maximum potential. Emotionally, mentally, and physically, your passengers may have good days and bad days. A cheerful greeting and some friendly conversation helps bring meaning to their day. Your vehicle and the places you transport your passengers may be the only opportunity they have to move out from the limitations of their home environment. Disabled persons also have special characteristics that a driver must be familiar with. It's important to become acquainted with all of the riders on your route and aware of the specific problems of each individual. Ambulatory passengers with hearing problems may require different attention than passengers who have severe sight impairment or a person who is subject to frequent seizures. Once you are familiar with the special needs of your riders, special seating assignments may be a necessary part of your transportation procedures. A regular seat assignment will allow ambulatory riders to board and go directly to their seats. Riders who have mobility problems should be seated near the front to make it easier for them to board. You must be aware of those riders who may become disruptive and assign them seats in the front where your presence may prevent a serious disturbance. Medication changes, or even the weather, may provoke disruptive or aggressive behavior. Make sure that all of your passengers are aware of the safety rules that you require to provide a safe journey. Passengers should be directed to use seat belts or seat restraints when necessary and available. The driver should set the example. This is a safety plus. Should a passenger under medication fall asleep or have a seizure, a seatbelt or restraining device can prevent possible injury resulting from a fall or slide out of the seat. The safe transportation of your passengers requires balance between friendliness and authority. A driver must be firm enough to ensure passenger safety and be friendly so that riders enjoy the trip without the pressure of over-supervision. A driver does have options to consider when confronted by disruptive riders. An initial verbal request may be sufficient to manage the passenger. A disruptive passenger can be assisted to a front seat for easier monitoring and separation. The driver can pull the vehicle off to the side of the road and inform the passengers that cooperation is necessary for safety. Continual disruptive behavior should be communicated to the supervisor, who should contact either the school, the home, or both. The manner in which each driver approaches discipline should reflect each passenger's problems and needs. Driver judgment, patience, and the method of reporting incidents are key factors for passenger safety. Effective communication is a most vital part of a driver's job. You cannot get people to do what is expected without communication. It is essential for drivers to have open lines of communication with their passengers, school officials, and parents or guardians. As a driver or an aide, most of your communications will be on a one-to-one basis. It's important that your communications are clearly understood. Make sure that you understand what others communicate to you. If you don't understand, ask. Let's examine two basic forms of communication: physical and verbal. While physically assisting a passenger who needs your help, you are communicating your concern for that person. A lot of communication with your riders will take the form of a smile, gesture, or a positive comment. That says you care. Communication with the visually impaired sometimes requires a special approach. When appropriate, offer your assistance verbally, in a gentle voice, and wait for your offer to be accepted before proceeding. Let the person take your arm for assistance. If you have visually impaired passengers, they will recognize your voice and can gain confidence through your verbal communication. If you're assisting someone who is mentally retarded, interact with that individual on a one-to-one basis. That person will recognize and appreciate your concern and feel understood. If the response from that person is slow, it doesn't necessarily mean the person is rude. Some people need more time to respond. Understand what your passengers are communicating to you. Watch their eyes and their body language. Nonverbal individuals use different methods to converse with others. Persons with severe hearing impairment may use manual communication. To facilitate communication, drivers should learn to use sign language to communicate essential messages. Slow lip movements may also be of assistance. In your communication, try to be sensitive and use common sense. We've discussed aspects of communication from the driver's perspective. The communication efforts of the school and the parent or guardian are equally important. School staffs can be helpful by notifying drivers of student behavior changes. These may be brought about by different causes, such as changes in the school program or changes in medication. Another key area of driver concern is the transfer of responsibility of the special education or handicapped student from school to transportation. In theory, the driver becomes responsible for the student at the point of pickup until the rider is transferred to another individual after unloading. The parent or guardian should be responsible to bring the student to the transportation vehicle. If the student is ill or not to be picked up at a scheduled time, the parent or guardian should notify the transportation agency not to stop that day. A school representative should be present to receive the student at the unloading point. Many of the problems a driver encounters are on the return trip at the end of the school day. Drivers are limited in the options they have when they are unable to transfer a school-age passenger to a responsible adult. A local school board policy for the transfer of responsibility should be in effect, and written guidelines for drivers should be followed. Drivers should discuss this area of their driving responsibility with their supervisors and make sure they know the plan of action to follow if there is no responsible adult at the drop-off point. Thoughtfulness. Sensitivity. Two key words that mean so much to handicapped students, adults, and elderly citizens. Two key words that guide drivers like yourself in their daily contact with people who really need people.